Welcome back to Workplace Wellness Strategies, everybody. I am your host, Derek Anderson with the Elevate Performance Group. Today we have a very special guest. His name is Mr. Chris Gargano. He is the founder of the Gargano Leadership Group, where he empowers emerging leaders with the skills to captivate their teams. He is also the host of the popular podcast, Keep the Line Moving. Chris, thanks for being here today. How are you?
I'm great. Hello, Derek. It's very nice that you're having me. I really appreciate this.
I'm excited to be here, man. Let's get it going. So we're here today to talk about leadership. It's something that's very important to both of us with helping teams. I help teams in the health and wellness field, and he helps empower leadership groups amongst, emerging members of the team and to get the most out of them. So, what does conscious leadership mean to you? It's something we talked about before, and it's something that you implement into a team. So, how do you do that, and what does that mean to you?
You know what, Derek? It means this. It's like awareness. So with my group and the programs that we do, and then I also teach at Montclair State University and NYU here in the, greater Northeast of the United States. Conscious leadership means who are you as a leader? How are you showing up? Whether you're an educator, a coach, a CEO, a vice president, a director, when you walk, you're in the parking lot, let's just say, right? And you walk into your building, what are you thinking about? Are you aware of your influence on others? How you present yourself? What are the words that you say? Who do you spend time with? Why do you spend time with them? Are you only spending time with the high achievers? What about the rest of the folks on your team? How do you, engage with equal stakeholders? Are you respectful to your bosses? Do you listen? It's conscious leadership. Who are we? What is our effect on people? And that is so, as you know, right? You're in the space. That's so important for people to understand how to motivate the unique talents of others. Well, you have to be aware of yourself first.
Absolutely. And self awareness is such an important thing in terms of how you can connect with someone else and get the most out of them because everyone is taught and learns and is motivated differently. So when you go in, like you kind of need that individualized element of how can I best help this person be who they want to be and get the most out of them. So when you go into a company, is there a common pain point that you see in terms of self-awareness amongst leadership that you need to present, or is it kind of a individualized basis where it might change every time?
So another great question to Derek, I would say this. It is individualized and I customize, right? I have a program, obviously, but I do a lot of listening to the clients, the company or the individual, based on where they want to go and how they want to get there and how I can help them, right? That's a general, kind of a jumping off point. But I will say this, that to answer your question directly, I would say as we evolve as human beings, right? And we have devices and we have this and there's this meaning like the two way in which we're connecting right now. You're in California, I'm in New Jersey, but we're able to have this conversation. But are we truly connecting? Right? So I would say the true essence of connection. I would say, I don't know about a pain point, but it's definitely a focus point, right? About how do we connect with each other? How do we, put the device down and walk across the hall? Or, let's meet up afterwards and talk about some issues that were surfaced in a meeting at 10 o'clock this morning. Let's connect on this, right? Derek, we spend a lot of time at our jobs. Connections help us, allies help us. People get us through the day, not like, oh, it's horrible here, but it helps to be connected to people, to further initiatives, to further your career, and to further enjoyment with your daily life, right? And connection brings that enjoyment. In at least what I've seen. I'm answering your question, and it's what I've studied, it's what I teach. It's like, how do you genuinely connect with someone? Well, it goes back to the beginning, right? Listening, understanding, working to make sure that not only how you're coming across, but how are you coming across to others so they can connect with you. That's what I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important to have that strong, cohesive team culture because the journey is up and down. And if you have, teammates and friends and colleagues on your side that are in your corner and you're in their corner, it can make everything so much more enjoyable and bring a lot back to the company. Now, what I've always wanted to know, because my work is so hands-on and in person, I've never really been super hybrid or remote outside of my app training. But have you noticed a difference in leadership in terms of hybrid versus fully remote versus in person? Like, how has that evolved in the last few years? And is there anything that you've had to implement or adjust to get the most out of the teams that you work with?
You just said the key word there, in my opinion, which is adjust. You have to adjust. You have to understand, okay, this is our mechanism. Just what you said. If there's a hybrid situation, well, let's go to this mechanism right now. It's a Zoom, you know, right? You have to adjust how you are. I was talking to somebody, a student of mine, the other night in class, and she was talking about, how she has a big event coming up and how she's engaging her team. And I said, well, how do you do it? The whole class is listening, and we have these exchanges all the time in class. I said, well, how do you do it? And she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Are you meeting in person or are you meeting in a remote situation?" She said, "Well, it's a remote." And I said, "Well, how do you start? How do you welcome them in the morning? Like, what do you say? What is your philosophy? Do you think about that?" And that goes back to conscious leadership. Our In the first part of our conversation, you and me, Derek, and she said, that's interesting." I said, "What is your demeanor? How do you welcome them?" And she went on to say how she does that. It was really interesting. And I said, "Are you lighter?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "Good morning." And I say, "How's everybody doing?" I said, "Oh, really interesting." And I said, "Do you find that you do that similarly when you're in person with them?" She said, "Yes, I do. It's just a little different. It's a little easier to make eye contact, to read people and their body language." But she's adjusted to realize and appreciate that if it's going to be Zoom, you still have to bring that energy, that enthusiasm. Derek, probably more so, but also authentically. You can't say, "Okay, we're on Zoom. I'm going to be, this different type of person." You just have to be aware and adjust to where you are. And you can't lessen hey, everybody, people are going to turn you off, right? You have to have, to the extent you can, we're all wired differently. Energy and enthusiasm is very valuable. Energy and enthusiasm is very valuable in a Zoom or a Teams or whatever the mechanism is, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Like self awareness, it's kind of a simple concept, but always remember simple and easy are not the same thing. So for myself, like it took me a while to get to know myself and know my own self awareness of what motivates me or how I can best be coached. If I may ask you that, when did you find that out and what is it? Like what helps to get the most out of you to keep that positive mindset and be coached in your own growth and experience?
Oh, wonderful question, Derek. Thank you so much for asking that. That's awesome. I will look back in my journey as an athlete and then as a professional, and I will say, I, if you care, that's all I needed. If you showed me you cared, if you were my baseball coach, right? Because I played a lot of baseball as a kid and into college, year round, as I got into high school. And I just gravitated and loved and appreciate coaches that cared. They didn't have to have all the technical knowledge, like, hey, you field on your left side, you throw the double play, this, that. Yeah, that's great. And I'm paying attention, but I can learn that, right? I could work on that. And yes, I do need the mechanics. There wasn't YouTube back then. I'm an older gentleman. So I would, but if they cared and they go, "Hey, Chris, how you doing? I saw you were 1 for 3, but you struck out a couple times the other day. How's everything going? Do you need some more time in the cage? Can I throw you some extra BP?" Whatever the case, if they cared, they had me. I would run through a wall. I would take extra grounders. And that's the same in my professional life, Derek. You don't have to be the most talented or whatever. Just show that you're into it with me. Let's do it together. So I guess the opposite of that would be I do not appreciate a selfish person, that demeanor. It's all about me, like those individual agendas. I'm a team guy. I like team and I gravitate and go with you. Again, it's not about talent. It's not about we're going to hit all these numbers. I don't care about, yeah, I care about it, right? That we're here to do a job for a reason. But if you care, we're going. We are going. And I'll go with you. That's what I would say.
Thanks for sharing that with us, Chris. It's hard for people to be open sometimes, so it means a lot. We have a similar background with that. I was a basketball player. I was never nervous to play in front of large crowds or anything, and the other team could talk trash to me and it wouldn't mean a thing. But I had a bad coaching experience where the coach would like threaten to pull you out if you made one mistake. And that was always hard for me was someone on my side being critical. So I always needed a more gentle approach. And the same thing applies in business when I do workshops and things, is that more gentle, supportive approach as opposed to being on you. But that's not the same for everybody, right? Some kids would like to get yelled at and it would motivate them. So that's something with self awareness as a leader. You need to understand with every other person is what best motivates them and take that approach the best you can. Like, for me personally, I've never been one to be hard on someone or yell at someone, but if that's what they need, I'll sure try.
And then, but Derek, that goes back to my point, and I'm sure you're the same way. I can tell. You can say whatever you want to somebody, if they're motivated differently, right? If they need a little kick, right? You could give them that kick as long as they know you care, right? It goes back to that. And you've spent time with them to, like your other point about understanding their unique talents and how they're motivated. That takes time. If you're going to lead people or coach people, you have to get to know them and how, like you said, how they're motivated and what are their triggers, right? And if they come in with bad body language or they're not getting it that day or not feeling it, how can you get them out of that? You can't just start throwing darts and go, oh, I hope that works. I hope that. No, you got to take time with them, understand them. It doesn't have to be hours and hours. For some folks, it is, but others, it could be just mutual exchanges or ask them questions. Being curious, Derek, that's what I talk about with clients and students and everybody that I try to help in this phase of my life. Be curious. Ask questions. There's so much power in that, right? Don't be the person that's bashful. If you're bashful, that's fine, or introverted. But when given the opportunity or you're slightly out of your comfort zone, ask questions. That brings people in. It's the opposite effect of a know-it-all because you're engaging. They don't know who started the question and answering. It's just engagement. It's just getting to know people. And I always emphasize ask questions, listen, and be curious. You'll see the results, right?
Yeah, curious is a great word to use because a lot of people and leaders are afraid to ask questions. There's an anxiety that can come with it sometimes, but really, people want you to be intrigued and to know about them. So, if you can get over that fear, and the more you ask and are willing to, and be collaborative, it gets easier. It becomes part of your learned behavior. So, an example of this is learning styles. So, when you go into a company, it's just easy for you to ask, like, hey, what's going to help you learn how to do this task the best, right? Some people are audio learners, some are visual, some are performance. Is that something that you often do when you're building a curriculum or go into a company?
I will, yes, and I will because I don't have the extensive time, right, to really understand that sometimes takes 6 months, a year, and if I'm fortunate to have those engagements, absolutely. But if my engagements are shorter, a month, 2 months, then I have to say what you said, right? Exactly what you said. It's like some of you learn differently. Some of you listen well. Some of you learn by speaking. Some of you learn by note taking. Some of you learn by engaging in constant question and answer, whatever. And it's separate and apart from the workshops that I conduct or the one-on-one coaching sessions. It's how they conduct themselves in their lives, right? In their professional lives. So being aware of that, learning how you learn takes work and time, right? And it's very valuable. Like I'm verbal, right? If you give me, Chris, would you rather write an email to explain and outline your thought process, or would you like to talk it out? Well, I'm going to take the latter. I'm going to talk it out and then write the email. Well, some people like to write the email and then have the conversation. There's sometimes versions, Derek, not to go on and on here, but sometimes there are six, members of the team, right? And the leader will say, let's go have a brainstorming session. Some people they'll get a surge of adrenaline to go be part of that brainstorming situation. Some are in the middle, they could take it or leave it, and some get anxiety, some get nervous. That's not my style of learning. I don't like to brainstorm. I would rather formulate my thoughts than share them with you, but I don't want to come in and be part of the creation of the thoughts. Does that mean that those individuals are any less creative than those that love brainstorming? No. They just process information differently. They learn differently. They speak differently. They write. They have preferences in the way that they're wired. We have to make room for people in all different ways in which they learn. That is what I have learned, Derek, which is great.
Yeah, that's a really good example. In the health and wellness industry, I've had that many times where someone feels more comfortable texting first or emailing, because there's a lot of emotional hurdles like body image issues or criticisms or anything that they've been through. And it's hard to talk about in person at first sometimes, especially if you're building that trust. So I'm sure you've experienced this too, as you mentioned with brainstorming. They still want to be included in the creation, but like you said, feel anxious being there, but they still want to share their thoughts and ideas, and a text format might be a better way to do that. So it's good as a leader to, like we said before, adjust to anyone's needs and adapt to how we can have them be a part of the team in the best way.
And Derek, that goes back to that self-awareness that we talked about at the beginning of this great conversation, which is that consciousness, that self-awareness. It's not just self-awareness for you, it's seeing everyone and how they're showing up. And if somebody's, not getting it over here and there's been like 48 minutes of meeting and they haven't said anything, well, maybe they'll come naturally, or you have to gently bring them into the conversation. And haven't you've been part of that? I worked for 33 years before I started my business almost 2 years ago, which is I've seen all of it, right? And that's a long time, right, to be in something. And I would see folks and I would know they were really noodling over there. They were really thinking there's something there. I just had to open the door for them gently. Not like, hey, could you give us your thoughts? No. Hey, what are you thinking over there? Or like take your voice down a little bit. That's that self-awareness. Create an opening. It's sometimes it's even a look. Just glance in their direction and smile, a little nod. Then they know they can just, even though you probably maybe have done that 3 or 4 times throughout, but they weren't ready. Now they're ready. Give them a little nod. Be inclusive. You're
Uh-huh.
welcome here, or level set the meeting. Hey, if anyone has any thoughts, but not like, does anyone have any thought? No, anyone has any thoughts, hey, this is the time. I really want to hear from you. Doesn't matter, and then they'll usually interrupt you and they'll go, hey, what about this? And then me, I don't hide my excitement or love of people, right? And I'll go, that's awesome. And then they light up, right? And then they stand up and they're happy, and if I embarrass people, I apologize. But I like to bring everybody into the fold.
Yeah, gently is a key word because, there's extroverts and introverts, and just because someone's introverted doesn't make them shy or unwilling to collaborate. It's like you said, gently let them in. They want to be a part of it. Believe it or not, I'm an introvert, even though we have a podcast now. I'm not shy or afraid to talk, but it was a growth process, and I've had people push me through that in a way that is how I need to be coached, and now we're here. So, did you ever have those teachers in school that would be like, all right, you have to raise your hand 3 times a week? Like, they'd force you to participate or they'd knock you down. I always found that weird, but that's kind of an example of gently versus being forced.
You know what? And I'm really like going through the catalog of teachers in my mind. I was so lucky. I had some fantastic teachers. Were they all great? No. Did I enjoy all their classes? No. But overall, Derek, I don't remember. Let's just put it this way. I got myself in trouble. It was never the teacher. Honestly, and I
Yeah.
remember in fourth grade, I talked too much and I got in trouble for it. Well, whose fault was that? Me. I talked too much. So I was the opposite. I was always talking too much. But as I've gotten older and appreciated the study of leadership and the study of psychology and going back to school and getting my master's later in my career, I have really worked on that, making room for the introvert and studied introverts, extroverts, and those of us in the middle. And Derek, in my leadership career, instead of getting more wordy, some might giggle when they hear this that know me real well, but I did work on talking less as a leader, listening more and talking less, listening more and talking less. And some term, I'll just give you away a little secret. In some of my workshops that I do, I have a little phrase that I say or a little sentence. The leader is not paid by the word. So, point being, listen, it's valuable.
Sometimes less is more powerful. If you say too much, it's harder to really grasp the message sometimes.
100%. And again, people that know me well are going to say that I kind of work through things verbally, but I'm working on that, right? It's a work in progress. You're never done. You're never, in my opinion, you've never arrived as a leader. It's a constant evolution of seeing what works, what doesn't, paying attention to industry trends, looking at your folks and working with them. They don't work for you, you work with them. And so I have paid attention to my style, which is okay, just, not so much verbal there, buddy. Even though that's how I learn best, I've learned to work with people and work through, what can be sometimes intimidating, somebody who's more verbal and others that are not.
It's always a journey and it's always growth. Even if you hit your goals or you're great at what you do, you can always still be better, always learning and always growing. I remember one time I spoke at just kind of a little wellness thing, but everyone there only got 60 seconds to speak. And some people up there were running out of time and trying to rush. And I went up and took like 20 seconds. And it was actually powerful because we all had little gifts and handouts, and probably the most people came up to me just for keeping that message strong and short. So it's little things like that. So one thing we've talked about is interactive leadership and how that development can achieve faster results for the team. So if I may ask you, what does interactive leadership mean to your program, and what do you do to achieve that?
Well, let's all that we've said about introverts, extroverts, way we learn, way that is best for us. At the end of the day, if you want to lead people, you have to be active. You have to figure things out. You have to communicate effectively. You have to listen. You have to write. There's a lot that has to go into the fundamentals of leadership. So what I have learned is, in part of my workshops, is we do a lot of back and forth. You can't come into a workshop and expect not to participate, right? You want to get the most out of it, right? Maximizing your time and your learning time. And that means you got to give and then you take and you learn and you understand people. But in order to do that, you have to interact. You have to volunteer information. And so we can learn about you, you can learn about yourself, and you can maximize our time together. So that's what I mean about that, Derek, which is let's do this together. But again, it's up to the facilitator, this case me, because you're asking me the question. I have to create an environment where people are comfortable sharing. And that means pausing, and that means allowing for space. If I ask a question and I need a volunteer, okay, who's got it? Who's got it? Hey, and do I call on people sometimes? Yes, I would be lying if I said I didn't. However, gently again, there's that word, allowing them to participate when they're ready. And if that's, 30, 40 seconds of silence to create that interactivity, then that's what's needed. Then that's what happens. And that's okay. To your great point and that anecdote you just told us, you had 60 seconds to talk and you spoke for 20. What did people do? They complimented you, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not always quantity, it's quality. So if we have to relax for a minute, all right, now we're ready to engage. Well, that interactivity is taking place on their terms, which is great, not necessarily always my term as the facilitator.
So, Chris, you've hosted workshops and worked in many different industries. To my California friends, he was with the San Francisco Giants a little bit, just down the road, Highway 80, and also the New York Jets, which I feel like they could use your leadership a little bit right now. Sorry, sorry, New York. But have you noticed a difference amongst the industries that you've been in as to what leadership styles work the best, or is it more pretty uniform?
It's all about people, Derek.
All about people.
All about people. And it's all about that, what we went back to in the great line of questioning in this conversation that I've enjoyed having with you, which is if people care, if people, respect one another, and there's a mutual goal and a shared vision, then so much can be accomplished, right? So the industries don't change. To your point, yes, I've been in professional football and baseball, but I've also done work with construction companies and plumbing companies and colleges, and it's all people relating to people. I don't mean to sound generic, however, it's true, right? We're all making up these organizations and we all have to understand each other, regardless if you're trying to score touchdowns, hit home runs, or achieve something very special for your client, whatever that client may be. You have to communicate clearly. You have to be patient. You have to have compassion for the different ways people operate in this world, especially now, Derek. So rapidly the world is changing, right? And we're so connected. We have to have patience. And here's a word, Derek, that I'm going to use here that have started using a lot as I've gotten older, which is grace. Allowing yourself some grace and giving others grace, which means this: be patient with people. Allow us to fail, to succeed, to take educated risks. And that's how you bring people together. That's how you create a mutual vision and being kind, to one another. So I don't think yes, there's certain, nuances of professional sports as compared to others. But that would take a podcast that would have to be very, very long to go into those. But yeah, I loved working for the Giants and Jets and also the Raiders. You left off the then Oakland Raiders, but I loved my time there as well.
As soon as you finished talking, I was going to bring up the Raiders because that's my team and they could definitely use your help as well right now.
No, I appreciate that, and I still have tons of friends at the Raiders, and they'll get it. They'll get it. They're smart people. Trust me, there's very smart people down there, and they're working very hard. And I can't wait to see the future. Seriously,
And we have Tom Brady now, so hopefully he can do something.
we shall see. Yes, he is part of that ownership group.
Patience and grace is key as well. For us, we work a lot with software employees, and a big issue is confidence and intimidation because a lot of them have never been in a gym lifestyle, and corporate gyms can be really intimidating. Think places like 24 Hour and stuff. You have guys on steroids or experts or people filming themselves, and there's just a lot going on. There's a lot to learn. So that's part of where we have to be patient is to help them grow that confidence and be able to feel comfortable in that environment. And when we can do that, if we keep that patience, that drives the usage rate up, which helps the company out with their participation rates. So doing that, it is a challenge, but it's something I enjoy doing, having people grow their confidence and just believe in themselves. And I'm sure you've ran into that as well, that self-belief.
Absolutely. And that you just triggered a thought there that I also talk about my programs, which is running your own race. Now, this is easier said than done, but what does that mean? That means exactly what you said. There could be somebody bench pressing 560 pounds to your left. They're
Ooh.
9, feet away from you on a bench. And then this person on the right is maybe in their 80s and they're doing curls with 2.5 pounds, right? You're there. That you have nothing to do with that person on your right and then nothing to do with the person on your left. You lift your weights. I'm using the metaphor, but to your industry, right? It's the same in corporate. Run your race. Do your learning. Do your education with how you want to get better. Whatever it is it your skill set? Is it leadership? Is it listening? Work to be the best version of yourself, right? And if you got out of college in 2018, right? Well, your friend has been promoted to this, and your other friend in I don't know, Florida has been promoted to that. You do you. Again, easier said than done. You know that. You just brought up your example. I have seen it too. It's easier said than done. But if you work to be great and you learn and you constantly have your eye on what makes you great and learning and developing and whatever that is for you, listening to podcasts, reading, having a mentor, a reverse mentor, somebody younger, somebody older, somebody in the middle, you can get to where you want to go. But I'm not being naive here. I understand that there's a lot of noise in the world and Instagram and all these things have these examples, but some of that's not real. So make your reality something you can control. That's my
Going,
thought.
going, to come full circle, going back to asking questions, how it's so important for leaders. It's important for everybody, and sometimes if you're scared, that's why it's important for a leader to ask, because they have something they want answered. But to everyone listening, never be afraid to ask questions. There's people who love to teach, and it makes them feel valuable and important to you. That's what I tell my clients when they're in the gym and they're on my app and I can't physically be there. Is there's people in the facility that would love to help you. Like never be afraid to ask. And that goes for basically every situation, I feel.
Oh my gosh. Derek, the first 12 years of my career, I was a reporter, a sports reporter all over the country. And I asked questions for a living. So I would go into, a tennis place and I would have a 18-year-old tennis star. I have to learn about that person. Yes, I have the stats. I know that they're the number one in the state, but I have to learn what that makes them tick. I have to tell a story about them and put it on the 7 o'clock news that night. So I have to learn about a nuance. I got to learn about what their inspiration is. So I only have probably 40 minutes with them, but I have to investigate, right? Yes, it's only an amateur tennis person and not like a president of a company or a politician, whatever. But that was my niche, right? That
Right,
was what
right.
I would, or it was a college football quarterback, or we'd go into San Francisco, or I worked out here on the East a little bit. I'd talk to Steve Young or whoever, and I had to ask questions. So, yes, was it part of the first 12 years of my professional life? Yes. Is that advantageous to what I'm doing now? Yes, it is. However, it came easy. That part came easy to me because I always wanted to know those answers. Being inquisitive gave me an advantage. And in life, in your industry, like how do I best, improve my biceps and triceps, right? How do I best couple those together? Do I work out a back and bis one day and biceps and chest and neck? What is the like? If you ask the question, you will get a great answer. Where does nutrition come into this? Where does my sleep and all of how much hydration, all of the things with fitness? Well, it's the same in what I do in leadership. How do you want to get an advantage of engaging with your people? Get to know them. Ask them questions. How do you like to learn? How do you like your assignments? Do you want me to text you? To your point earlier, should we communicate on Slack? Do you want to meet one on one? When do you want to meet one on one? That all matters, right? Do you want to have your coffee first? Do we want to meet in the afternoon? What is best for you? The only way to know that is to ask questions. And then all of a sudden you're connected and then you get better results. So, what's the method to the madness? Here we go. In your industry, and I'm not telling you, you're the expert, but you brought it up, is a more fit and more sound individual, right? They're getting the most out of their workouts. In my industry, what is the end result? The end result is you get great business results because your team is connected and they want to work for you, right? And the opposite of that is when you don't ask questions, you assume things. You assume they want the meeting at this time. You assume they communicate by text and Slack. No, actually, they want to meet in the hallway and just have an informal conversation with you. But you didn't know that because you didn't ask. So that's the advantages of curiosity in leadership, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Leadership is so layered, right? There's performance hurdles and mental hurdles, or both. And as a leader, you ask those questions, you find out what each individual needs, and then you can best progress and move forward. So, to sum everything up and everything we've talked about, is there a final positive message that you would like to leave the audience with if you could bring something out that would truly benefit everybody?
I think it goes what we were talking about. All of this comes down to caring, Derek. Care about your people, right? And that's a basic human quality, right? About caring, right? In other words, if you go into your industry, whatever that industry is, and you have KPIs or you have things you have to do, of course, we're not blind to that. However, caring about your people can get you there, arguably, in a much more refined and professional way because everybody will come with you. So I will go back to what I said about coaches and people that I've really enjoyed as leaders of mine over my life, the power of caring, the power of showing that caring by being curious and trying to work to understand people. That's what I would say.
Beautifully put. Well, Chris, thank you so much for your time today. Can you please tell the audience where they can find you, any LinkedIn profiles, websites, or any way they can reach out?
I'm big on LinkedIn. I do a lot on LinkedIn, and my profile is just my name. And the LinkedIn, it's pretty easy to find. GarganoLeadership.com is our website, which has all of our services and things that we're about. The Keep the Line Moving podcast is on our YouTube page, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. We are over 100 episodes now, and we
Wow,
have
wow,
leaders and
congrats.
coaches and just athletes and from all different industries, and they share servant leadership and all different concepts about listening. But it's really about the guests and the wonderful ways in which they've led people and impacted lives. It's really, I suggest you listen. I think you would enjoy it.
Yeah, it's a great podcast, everyone. Make sure you check it out. I will drop all the links in the description and add them to the video. So, Chris, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you to everyone who watched and listened, and I will catch you next time.